When you think of the most clutch and impactful defensive plays in playoff history, a number of moments come to mind. There's Ron Swoboda's game-saving dive in the 1969 World Series, Jeff Conine's game-winning outfield assist in the 2003 National League Division Series, Jim Edmonds' run-saving catch in Game 7 of the 2004 National League Championship Series, Willie Mays' famous over-the-shoulder catch in Game 1 of the 1954 World Series, and there's many more. However, there's one play in particular I believe doesn't get the recognition it deserves. It's one of the greatest defensive plays in playoff history in the midst of one of the most clutch half innings ever. It's a play that might have changed baseball history and one most might not be aware of. The play itself occurred in Game 3 of the 1999 National League Division Series between the Houston Astros and Atlanta Braves, but first, you need to know a thing or two about these teams entering the series. The Braves of the 1990s need no introduction. They were one of the greatest sports franchises in the world during this decade. With the exception of the strike-shortened 1994 season, the Braves won the division every year from 1991 through 1999. In that time frame, Atlanta went to the World Series 4 times, won one of those World Series, and went to the National League Championship Series the other 3 times. They boasted perhaps the greatest pitching rotation of all time, had a mirage of Hall of Famers, and were perhaps the favorite again to win the World Series in '99. The Astros, on the other hand, were the opposite. After a 10-year playoff drought from 1987 to 1996, Houston returned to the playoffs in 1997 and 1998, only to lose in the first round both times. That includes a sweep in '97 at the hand of the Braves. Despite being in the league for nearly 40 years, the Astros had yet to win a single postseason series. 1999 in particular might have been a make-or-break year for them to finally win a series, let alone the World Series. While all still excellent players, 3 of the Astros' top sluggers, Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio, and Ken Caminiti, were all getting up in age. Entering the playoffs, Bagwell was 31, Biggio 33, and Caminiti 36. In addition to that, lefty ace Mike Hampton only had 1 more year on his contract before free agency, so his fate on the team was up in the air. The Astros needed at least a playoff series win, and they needed it now more than ever. After the 2 clubs exchanged victories in the first 2 games in Atlanta, the series moved to Houston for games 3 and 4. 2 absolutely vital games for either team to make a statement in the series. The Braves can continue their decade-long dominance, winning on the road to once again advance to the National League Championship Series, while the Astros could finish the job at home, winning a playoff series for the first time in their near 40-year-long history. Tom Glavine took the hill for Atlanta to start this game, and immediately did Houston jump on top of him. In the bottom of the first inning, Ken Caminiti drove in Craig Biggio with an RBI single, which was later followed by an RBI scoring, bases-loaded walk to Tony Eusebio. The Astros led 2-0 after 1 inning, and that was it for a while. Mike Hampton took the mound for Houston and was incredible for the Astros. Through the first 5 innings, he had struck out 6 batters and not allowed a run to score. Although, that all changed in the 6th. With 2 outs and nobody on base, the Braves rallied. A single to Brett Boone and walk to Chipper Jones set up 2 on for outfielder Brian Jordan, who connected for a 3-run go-ahead home run. Hampton would get out of the inning without allowing another run, but now momentum was in favor of the Braves. The score stood 3-2 entering the bottom of the 7th, where, after a double and a walk, pinch hitter Bill Spires hits a game-tying single to drive in Glenn Barker to knot the game up at 3 apiece. The Astros struck early on the Braves, Atlanta came back to take the lead off Mike Hampton, and now Houston has tied the game up. Despite loading the bases with 1 out later in the inning, relief pitcher Mike Remlinger struck out Ken Caminiti and induced a flyout from Matt Mieske to keep the game tied at 3 entering the 8th. Neither team could score in the 8th or 9th inning, so Game 3 went into extras. With this game in extra innings, the stakes seem higher than ever for both teams. A win for the Braves would guarantee they extend the series to go back to Atlanta for a potential Game 5, while a win for Houston would mean a commanding 2-1 series lead with a chance to win it all at home the following day. In the top of the 10th, the Braves load the bases with 2 outs for Andrew Jones, but reliever Doug Henry was able to get him to fly out to end the inning. Still 3-3 entering the bottom of the 10th. This is where we finally see the defensive play in question. Honestly, this entire half innings performance is what ultimately changed baseball history. Atlanta relief pitcher Russ Springer took the mound here for his second inning of work after a 1-2-3 ninth inning. First baseman Jeff Bagwell is the first man up, and Springer walks him to put the winning run on base with no outs. On the very next pitch to third baseman Ken Caminiti, he singles to right. Winning run now in scoring position with nobody out. Springer dug himself into a hole, and it's only going to get worse from here. How could it possibly get any worse, you're wondering? The next batter, outfielder Stan Javier, attempts to sacrifice both runners over on a bunt, but of course, Russ Springer and catcher Eddie Perez both look at each other rather than field the ball, and Javier is able to reach base safely. It was ruled a single, but man oh man, that should have been an error on someone. With 3 base runners allowed, Springer departed and was replaced by the closer John Rocker. Well, here we go. The Astros had the bases loaded and nobody out in a tied game in the 10th inning. At bat is the center fielder Carl Everett, who was the undisputed second best hitter on the team behind Jeff Bagwell. In 1999, Everett slashed .325 with a .398 on base and .571 slugging for .969 OPS and 143 adjusted OPS in over 500 plate appearances. He was one of the best hitters in the league, and it wouldn't take much for the winning run to score. A single, decently hit fly ball, or a slowly hit ground ball is all it would take for the Astros to go up 2-1. Nearly 40 years, but it certainly looked great for Houston to win their first postseason series in franchise history. For the Braves, this was certainly looking like the first time since 1990 they wouldn't appear in at least the National League Championship Series. Sure, it wouldn't end the series if they lost this game, but it would be a major uphill battle. For you see, Houston starter Shane Reynolds was penciled in as the Game 4 starter, and he threw 6 innings of 1-run ball in Game 1. So lose this game, and the Braves have to face the same pitcher who beat them in the first game of the series. Anyway, with the count 2-2 on Everett, he hits a rocker slider to the right side of the infield, where first baseman Ryan Klesko fields the ball and throws it to the plate to force Bagwell out at home. Klesko was playing shallow, allowing him to charge in on the slowly hit grounder to get a king-sized first out of the inning to extend the game for at least one more batter. That next batter was the catcher, Tony Eusebio. He wasn't a terrific hitter in 1999, hitting at a .709 OPS and 81 adjusted OPS, but he did have an RBI already in this game with a bases-loaded walk in the first inning that drove in the second run of the game. It's this at-bat where we see the monumental defensive play. What exactly happens in this at-bat?
Slider. He's going to have to hurry. He got him. What a play by Walt Weiss.
Before even thinking about what just happened, it's honestly a miracle in itself that Weiss was in the game to begin with. He didn't start this game, as he was brought in as a pinch hitter in the 7th inning. After Tom Glavine threw 6 innings of 2-run ball, he was due up to bat with 2 outs in the top of the 7th, but Weiss pinched hit for him and remained in the game at shortstop. However, Weiss was not even the original player set to pinch hit, as infielder Howard Battle was on deck, but he was swapped for Weiss.
Well, now, while Hernandez was up there, Howard Battle had come out on deck, but after the force out, Battle went back to the dugout, and now Walt Weiss has come out.
Why didn't Weiss start this game? He was much better with the glove than with the bat, as evidenced by his lifetime .677 OPS and 78 adjusted OPS. In 1999 in particular, he hit a .637 OPS and 63 adjusted OPS. While he had a long 14-year career in Major League Baseball, 1999 was his penultimate season in which he was subjected to a platoon and defensive specialist role. Half of the games he played in 99 came as a sub rather than a starter, and that includes the postseason. He didn't appear at all in Game 1 and came in as a defensive sub in Game 2. So here he is, in his typical role replacing the everyday shortstop. Had Braves manager Bobby Cox let Glavine pitch one more inning or let Howard Battle pinch hit instead, perhaps Weiss would have never came into this game. He was only able to pinch hit because Atlanta catcher Eddie Perez, who batted .249 in 1999, singled off Mike Hampton to eventually bring up the pitcher spot. Had Perez not gotten on base, Glavine's spot wouldn't have come to bat. Again, would Weiss have been eventually subbed into this game had he not pinch hit there in the 7th? Maybe, but maybe not. As far as I'm concerned, everything had to go right in order for Weiss to be on the field to make that spectacular play to keep the game alive. Speaking of which, it looks better the more you watch it. A bullet off the bat, Weiss has a fraction of a second to dive, knock the ball down, gather it as he comes to his feet, only to throw the ball on target to the catcher as he's falling to the ground, all with Ken Caminiti jolting down the line as the winning run. Weiss was also in the perfect, and I mean perfect position as the ball was hit. As Rick Sutcliffe said,
Walt Weiss in perfect position. Look at him playing more so up the middle. If he's over one more step to his right, this ball game's over with.
if Weiss is a foot over to his right, he would not have been able to get to the ball and the game is over. Speaking of which, what happens next? With 2 outs now, the batter, Ricky Gutierrez, strikes out and the game heads to the 11th inning. The Astros had the bases loaded and nobody out, but the Braves induced 2 ground balls to twice force out the runner at home and escape a monster-sized jam. Atlanta would eventually score a run in the 12th inning and win the game 4-3 to take a 2-1 lead. The following day, the Braves won again and advanced to the National League Championship Series for the 8th consecutive year. They would win there as well and advance to the World Series for the 5th time since 1991, only to lose to the New York Yankees. If Walt Weiss doesn't make that play and the Astros win, anything is possible. Perhaps Houston eventually wins in 5 games and would meet the Mets in the National League Championship Series instead of Atlanta. With those 2 teams in the Championship Series and not the Braves, the entire outcome of the World Series may have changed for all we know. Perhaps the Astros or Mets win it all and the Yankees don't win 3 World Series in a row. Speaking of those 2 teams, the Astros trade away Game 3 starter Mike Hampton to the Mets, and he played a key part in New York's World Series run 1 year later in 2000. Had Houston advanced further in the playoffs in 99, maybe that trade doesn't go through and Houston opts to extend Hampton if they could have made it to the Fall Classic in 99. Also speaking of the year 2000, Houston finished below 500 that season with a 72-90 record. They returned to the playoffs again in 2001, only to get swept in the first round by, you guessed it, the Atlanta Braves. Keep and extend Hampton, and maybe the Astros don't get swept in 2001. Whatever could have happened had the Astros won Game 3 is pure speculation. But it seems without saying that Walt Weiss changed MLB history with what might be the greatest and most clutch defensive play in postseason history.